Thank you for being here. My name is James Kramer. I'm Community Engagement Manager for Clowes Memorial Hall of Butler University. Pleasure to see you all here, have you here for what proves to be a really interesting conversation about Indian classical dance. Conversation with David. We're going to get started in a little bit, but I wanted to let you know while you're enjoying some pizza, a bit of housekeeping. Of course, we've got exits. You most came through over here, the glass doors. We also have one on the other side if you need to. All of our restrooms are upstairs, so if you need to exit either side. We are filming this evening as well, so I want to let you know that. So if anybody has any issues with that, you can move to the sides so you're not in the line of the camera. Also, events like this and many that we have here at the hall, especially the ones that have engagement into the community in forms that we go out to the School for the Deaf or the School for the Blind and Visually Impaired or to Decatur Central or to Shelbyville or right here at Butler University with master classes and lecture dims where we actually go and work with the students. Likewise, we have some things like this evening where we bring people here to the hall to get familiar with, to be introduced to the venue, the space, a bit more of an opportunity. So we have a conversation series that really helps us do that. Of course, tonight, our subject, and then next month, we're doing a conversation with David Ali on Jazz 101. That's going to be sort of centering around a couple jazz shows we have next month, Marcus Roberts Trio, and then Raising Cane, the Harlem Renaissance, starring Jasmine Guy. There's information on that in our season calendar events, which we have upstairs in the racks. You might pick one of those up. Share it with a friend. We love having people who know about our things or are learning about our things to share those with other people who may not be aware of that. It really helps us out because we just cannot get to every person and tell them our story. So really rely on you and help us doing that. We have another conversation then in March, that's going to be on Visual Arts in Indiana. The Portfolio Club, longest running arts club in Indiana, is going to be represented and having a discussion. We're considering maybe a panel discussion version or maybe a Q&A with a couple people kind of thing. We're still formulating that. And then we have in April a conversation with Howard Caldwell. Many of you know and remember Howard Caldwell from any number of different ways. He has assembled and compiled and written a book about the golden age of Indianapolis theaters. So very interesting book if you haven't read it. Really, it's a fascinating read. And one of the things that I'm coming out of that with is I want to go around the city and see where all these theaters were because he addresses them, where they were located, various things that went on in those theaters, what happened to them that they're no longer here, or what is happening because some of them still are. And those are, again, related events to what we do in Clowes. Obviously, we're a theater that presents, and I think we are on the shoulders of previous theaters that have been through our history and our community and where we are today serving the public, serving what we believe is our mission to bring a varied programming to our community. So I also want to let you know that we have some purple sheets over there, as well as DK has some green sheets. If you'd like to sign up and be on our e-news, we're going to do a little bit tonight. Jeannie and I are going to sort of cross tonight's people, so we both get names. If you feel strongly about not being on one or the other's mailing list for some reason, you can let that be known. But otherwise, we just want you to be informed of what we have coming. And very often then you'll get the first announcement for things, whether it's a new season or some special offers or some on sales, things like that. So that's important to gather. It is not for us to just send you a lot of mail all the time that is just going to fill your inbox. And then also over there you'll see some postcards on other conversations with David, as well as this upcoming February programming for Marcus Roberts and Harlem Renaissance, the Raising Cane program I mentioned. And at this time I'd like to thank our sponsors and then introduce our speakers. Of course, we are a department of the university. We feel very fortunate to have that kind of foundation and support and be here in this location to be able to do the kind of programming we do. Butler Cultural Requirements. Who else here getting a BCR tonight? Okay. This is an opportunity for our students here at the university to get cultural experiences, and this is an event that they can get credit for tonight, so it's approved by that. Of course, Basbo Pizza. We want to give it up for Basbo Pizza. If everybody's enjoying their pizza, yay. Yeah, very good. Thank you for Basbo, and thank you, Lynn, for manning the table and not losing an arm over there in the process. That was great. Artworks is the National Endowment for the Arts. NEFA, New England Foundation for the Arts. Arts Midwest. Indiana Arts Commission, Arts Council of Indianapolis, as you can see, is a large number of funding organizations that help support what we do here. So at this time, I'd like to get going and turn it over to our own David Hochoy and Dr. Anindita Sen. Please help me welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm David Hochoy, and I'm the Artistic Director of Dance Kaleidoscope, and welcome to Conversations with David in this very, very special Conversations. We are very thrilled to have Dr. Anindita Sen as our guest. She is our resident expert in classical Indian dance, and tonight we're going to find out a lot about classical Indian dance, what it is, where it belongs in the culture, its importance, and maybe you'll teach us a few mudras.
Sure, yeah.
Because I think it would be really interesting for everybody to learn them. And we also really want to start with your life. So please be seated, okay. And let's start the conversation. So Dr. Sen, I read in your bio that you started dancing when you were 2 years old. 2.
Yeah, that's what happens when your mom tells you need to start dancing and puts you to school, you know. I can't blame her completely. She comes from a family of somewhat of a musical family, and she herself is a vocalist. Thank you, David. Yeah, not quite that tall. So mom put me in a school. I was only 2. I could barely lift my legs up. I used to put my hand on my teacher's shoulder to actually lift my leg and do a step. But I think starting that young, I realized that this is something I want to do forever.
And tell us what part of India you were growing up in.
Yeah, so India, not quite as large as the US, but fairly large country. I grew up in a city called Calcutta, which is on the east of India. So many of you are nodding your heads. You're probably familiar with that city. Yeah.
And can you tell us, was this normal for someone to start dancing to dancing school at the age of 2? Or were you abnormal?
Good question, David. So the part of the country that I come from, I think girls are encouraged not just to get a solid education, but also learn fine arts. And so either take vocal lessons or dance lessons or painting or something like that. And you see that a lot in the southern part of the country as well. Maybe dancing at 2 is abnormal, but like I told you, it was my mom's decision, not mine. But I'm glad she did, in retrospect.
So tell us now, so you started at the age of 2, and you kept on, of course, dancing through your early years and all the way through till you were a teenager. Tell us what was that like? What kind of dance were you studying? And how difficult was it? And did you do it 5 times a week or?
Right. Good questions. And Indian classical dance, just like David, you would attest to this. You know, if you're wanting to learn ballet or something that's rooted in classics, it requires your 100%, you know, and a lot of practice and a lot of repetition and a lot of your teacher telling you that you're not yet done with this step, so go do it again for 2 more weeks until you learn something new. That's the same that happened with me too. And I was actually learning 2 different Indian classical dance styles when I was younger. So India is a very diverse country. I don't know if any of you have been there, but the states are such that if you travel from one state to another, it's almost like going from one European country to another. The languages can be different, the cuisine is different, the traditional costumes are different, the music is different, the dance is different. So I was learning a South Indian classical dance style, which Ragamala will be doing, and you'll all get to see. That's Bharatanatyam. And I was learning a North Indian classical dance style, which is called Kathak. And after being introduced to both of these, pretty intensive, because I used to do 2 days a week of Bharatanatyam, 2 days a week of Kathak on top of school, and mom wanted me to do vocal lessons as well, and painting. So I had a pretty hard schedule growing up. But I think once I became a teenager and started going to high school, I realized this is insane. I can't do this. So I convinced my mother that my passion really is with the North Indian classical dance style. So the dance that I do is Kathak. It's very different from Ragamala, but the roots are the same, being Indian classical dances. So the original treatise of Indian classical dance is called Natya Shastra, and that's where everything evolves. So the roots are the same, but the depiction, the music, the styles are different. I hope I could kind of
Yes, and
explain.
I think, and here's what I would love you to do. I'm so demanding. It would really help our audience because we know practically nothing about classical Indian dance. So can you give us a kind of a time frame? You know, ballet, for instance, was invented in Paris, France, the court of Louis XIV, 400 years ago. Is there a kind of a when did Indian classical dance become formed or codified?
Right. So I think the earliest example of Indian classical dance is in a book called the Natya Shastra. And I think that was written by one of our sages. He's called Bharat Muni. And that was probably BC. So, I mean, just relating to the time, even though this was in India, correct? So many, many years ago. If you go to a lot of the temples today, you will see carvings that depict dancers, you know, and those temples have been around for ages. So dance has very much been a part of the Indian society from a very long period of time. So Ragamala will be performing Bharatanatyam. That dance was actually done by temple devotees, and they were called Devadasis. So essentially, these women lived in the temple, they worshipped, they did all the work in the temple, and they danced. And they literally just grew up in the temple, so they are called Devadasis. Kathak, the one that I do, has an interesting twist, because even though it started in the temples like Bharatanatyam, when India was conquered by the Mughals, which are the Persians, and they conquered Delhi and they put their sultanate there, they wanted dancers in their courts. And so a lot of the Kathak dancers, even though they started off in the temple, they ended up in courts. So it has both a Hindu aspect and a Persian aspect. And this is the only classical dance form that has both of these aspects. So it makes it very rich in my mind as a result. So it's very old, but it continues.
At least a couple thousand years, right?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
That's fantastic, and of course, and it's wonderful that the tradition of dance is living on through you and for all of the other people who dance it. So tell us what happened when you blossomed into this beautiful teenager girl, and so. Did you want to become a professional dancer? Is there such a thing as a professional dancer in India?
Yes, very much so. So, I don't know about all of you, but a lot of Indian parents want their kids to be really good in studies. I think you probably already are aware of that. So I did make the mistake of going and telling my parents, I want to be a professional dancer. And they laughed, and they said, well, you're good in school too, so keep that in mind. And then, and then I realized that, yes, I am very interested in science. I tried for medical school in India. I got in. But then I decided that, do I really want to be doing surgeries and, you know, all this stuff? Because that's going to just eat up my whole life, and I won't be able to enjoy dance or some of the other things that I probably won't be doing if I'm a doctor. So I thought, why don't I instead do research? So that way I can have my interest in science alive, but also be able to do something else. So I got a chance to come here as a graduate student, as a PhD student. And so I spent a lot of time studying and getting my degrees. But once that was done, and I was a postdoctoral fellow at Duke University, I said, okay, I can get back into dance again. So one thing I realized, David, is you can't really keep on an art form if you don't teach, just by thinking that you'll perform, because we are moms, we are wives, we are women. I mean, we just have so many personas, so sometimes it's difficult to just do only what you like to do. But having to teach, because I have a school in Carmel, and I have a lot of really interested kids who are born and brought up here, but they love Indian traditions. They want to maintain the heritage that their parents have and learn Kathak. So I've been very successful in keeping up with the dance form. I think I owe it to my kids, my students. And I don't have a daughter. I have a son, so these students are my daughters.
And do you still perform yourself?
I do, David. So I think after a point, you still have to kind of balance whether you want to be a teacher or a performer. So the way I structure my shows are, I will do maybe a solo, I will do maybe a group dance, but then I'll also promote my students because they are the next generation, and I want them to be able to keep up with the dance and pass it on.
So why don't you tell the audience what your next performance is going to be and what the name of your company is and where you perform so that they'll get a chance to come see it.
Right.
And see you.
Right. So I have a flyer at the back of the hall on that table. My school's name is Nrityangan. I know it's a mouthful. My mom gave that name. It is Sanskrit for an area of dance. So it's Angan means an area, and Nritya is dance. So Nrityangan means an area of dance. And we are located, the studio is actually in the basement of my house because, as you know, this is not the only thing I do. I work full-time as a scientist at Lilly, so that's what my head tells me to do, and my heart tells me to dance, right? So I get to do both. But keeping it in the basement, it makes it easy for me to juggle all the different things that I have to do. Our next performance, actually, is going to be on March 28th. It's going to be at the Pike Performance Arts Center, and it's our annual showcase. So every spring, we do an annual showcase from our school where we present new choreographies, and every student gets to perform, whether they are at a very beginner level or whether they are intermediate level, at an advanced level. And the best part is this time one of my students is actually choreographing as well. So she's going to be presenting her choreography for the very first time. So.
And fantastic. And just coincidentally, I would like to say that it falls on the same weekend that Dance Kaleidoscope is presenting the Ray Charles and Ella Fitzgerald show downtown. But we perform Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you can make it a dance weekend.
Exactly.
Come and see us on Friday or Sunday and go and see Anindita's concert on Saturday, right?
Ours is a free concert, so all of you are invited.
Yeah.
Just come. Just come.
and did you say this at the Tarkington?
It's actually at the Pike Performing Arts
At Pike
Center.
Performing Arts Center. So that's fantastic. So I'd like us to talk. Would anybody like to ask Anindita any questions about her?
Great question. The best dancer in Kathak today, he is 75 years old, and he is a man. And I still remember telling my husband that when I had a son, that I would really like him to learn Kathak, and my husband said, I think he's going to like basketball more, just like most dads. But there are a lot of men who dance, and like I said, I have a lot of respect for this gentleman. I had the pleasure of hosting him last September. He came here from New Delhi in India, right after the government of India had bestowed the Living Legend honor to him. And he traveled here with his troupe from Delhi, and they did a phenomenal performance. I mean, he even dances today. So, men and women dance together? Absolutely. There are a lot of couples who are dancers. So they started off dancing together, then they married. And they can do some pieces that are very intimate, and sometimes it's difficult to do it with just a partner. It's easier with your husband, I guess, and they come out just phenomenal. So.
When you resumed your studies, did you do that here, or did you go back to India?
No, I moved here in 1990, and this is home now. So I go back to India every other year. My parents come and visit us, but we lived first in Iowa City, where I came for grad school, met my husband there, went back to get married. Then we moved to North Carolina, stayed there for 10 years, and now we are in Indianapolis for 12 years.
But did you resume your studies, so you studied here in the States when you picked back up?
Thank you.
That's right, yeah.
Where did you do that?
The dance, you mean?
Where did you do your studies to continue your dance?
The studies of dance, always I did back in India. So every time I went to visit, I would meet up with my teacher, my guru, and learn new pieces from her. But whenever there have been artists who travel here and do master classes, I've made sure that I'm taking those as well, you know, just to learn different styles and stay current.
Yeah, speaking of men dancing, we had at least 3 Indian men dancers here at Butler about 4 years ago, involved in, they were from Kerala, southeast of India, other side of India. I've been told it's remote and resembles the Pacific Northwest. They gave us a class on the Kathakali.
Yes.
Katha means
Math.
storytelling here now, I see.
Yes.
So what does Kali mean? Kathakali.
No, the whole word Kathakali is a different form of dance. So don't break up Kathak from Kathakali. Kathak is a separate dance form. Kathakali is another dance form.
I see. Okay. Well, anyway, we were told that it took this one man 14 years to learn his little hand movements and so on. And then they did the classic Hindu priest and prostitute. And so would you comment on all that? That's the other side of India now, isn't it?
It is the southern part of India. Kathakali is a very difficult dance because a lot of it you have to do on your big toe. You can't do it flat on your foot. And then you wear these masks when you're dancing, and the costume is extremely elaborate. Sorry that I missed that show. I was here 4 years ago. I don't know why I missed it. But I've seen a lot of Kathakali back home. The women don't have quite as much of a elaborate costume as the men do. And it's probably one of the toughest Indian classical dance forms.
We were lucky to get it here at
Yes,
Butler, and
definitely.
And these people were helping the students in the play and
Right,
so on.
right.
One other question: there's a movement you see a lot in Bollywood and films, and it's where the women, I notice, move their heads back and forth, and they keep it vertical. So tell us about that. Where does that come from, and what does that mean?
Right, so it's
Right,
this.
right,
Yeah,
right.
you'll see a lot of that in Ragamala. And that is part of Bharatanatyam, actually, shaking the head like this. So essentially they will raise their hand like this and go, tam, tam. So that is very much Bharatanatyam. We don't do that in Kathak.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What part of India do they do that in?
South.
The South? Mm-hmm. Not in Kerala, though.
Not in Kathakali, not so much in Kathakali, but more in Bharatanatyam and Kuchipuri. So
I
there are
see.
so many different styles. Yeah.
Those Indian dancers, actually, first of all, I should tell you that they were in residence here. They were artists in residence. They were Crystal Dahan Fellows, artists in residence, for a week, or maybe they were 2 weeks at the theater department. And they came and they gave the Dance Kaleidoscope dancers a class. And the Dance Kaleidoscope, they wanted the Dance Kaleidoscope dancers to walk on the sides of their
Yeah,
feet like this.
yeah,
They were
yeah.
sore for days afterwards.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, yes.
You mentioned that early forms of dance started with women at the temples. How did men become incorporated in the dance?
That's a great question. So the temple dancers, the Devdasis that I talked about, were more in the southern part of the country. Kathak, the one that I do, started off with these wandering storytellers. So essentially, Kathak comes from the word katha, which means stories. And these storytellers were all men. And they really didn't have very elaborate costumes. They had just something that they tied around their waist and a hat and maybe a little scarf. And there would be somebody who would be playing some sort of an instrument, and they would wander from village to village, telling the stories of mythology, enacting them out. So this one person could do all the different roles of our epics. Okay, and those were all done by men. So essentially, this lady asked about whether men dance, and I talked about Birju Maharajji, who's one of the best dancers of Kathak even today. His family was one of the best Kathak exponents that we've ever had, and it was always passed down from father to son. It's only him who has now passed it on to his daughter. You didn't see too many of his sisters or maybe his aunts dancing, but it's now that Maharajji, after him, he has 2 sons dancing and even a daughter who's dancing. So
I think we saw this along, oops, thank you. I think we saw this along the west coast of India, and I'm not positive. But it wasn't really dance, it was more expression with the eyes and the face and very elaborate makeup.
yes.
And there may have been some dancing in the background, but is that a form of dance to do it?
Expression is an integral part of what we do, of our dance. And that's why I think it's very important when you're watching Ragamala to watch their dancers' faces too. So they will be making facial expressions with their eyes and their lips, and especially when they are trying to emote and tell stories. Okay,
These 2 people were actually seated, as you and David
Right.
are, on stage and stayed seated most of the time with some other activity around them.
Right.
But it was very, very elaborate, big eyes.
Right. Yeah. So that probably is not dance, but it's just an expressive form of it. But expressions are critical for us because one of the parts of Indian classical dance is called abhinay, and where we talk, we depict different characters from our epics and our mythologies, and we have to be very, very expressive because the same dancer I will probably sometimes be Krishna, who is this god who used to be very truant and be naughty and tease all the women, and then I'll be changing character and becoming the woman who's being teased. So I have to show both sides of that in my dance, and without expression, that's almost impossible.
We are to prepare you a little bit to come and see, because you're going to see Ragamala next week, Saturday. And we should tell you a little bit about the company. They're based in Minneapolis. And what's really wonderful about them is that they are taking elements of classical Indian dance, but they're also combining it with contemporary dance. So it's both mixed, and the music is an original composition, and it's played with some traditional instruments, but it's also played with, I think there's a saxophone in there, and so it's everything is mixed up. And I think what would be really fun for this audience, well, first of all, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about the elements of the dance, because, it helps when we go to see ballet. We know that the plie is very important, the turnout is very important, the port de bras is very important. When we go to see modern dance, we go sliding to the floor is very important, contractions are very important, flinging your body around. And I do know that I was lucky enough to study Bharatanatyam at Jacob's Pillow in 1973 with a guy called Matteo, who also taught us flamenco. And he was this guy from Brooklyn. But he was a brilliant dancer, and he actually told us some wonderful stories, some wonderful stories. And one of the, actually, I would love to share this with you because I don't think this audience, and you don't know this either. Okay. But what we were doing before, what Anindita was doing before, which is this, it's called Sundari, right? Well, that's what he told us. It was called a Sundari. But so in the early 1920s, Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn they're considered to be the fathers of modern dance, and they got famous because they loved to dance exotic dances, and so they would do their versions of Japanese and Chinese and Indian and all these dances. But Miss Ruth, who was beautiful and was very, very good with fabric, never could do a Sundari, so she would do this instead. Can you see that? But so one of the wonderful things that Matteo taught us was that in Bharatanatyam, and maybe it's the same in Kathak, because it's based on storytelling, the hands have gestures, and
That's
each
right.
gesture
That's
has a
right.
certain means something. So
Right.
it would be great if you could teach us
Yeah.
just a few simple gestures that we could do that, and then we would learn a little bit about Bharatanatyam or the mudras, and then you would follow, and then you could see if Ragamala people were making these mudras. And by the way, Maurice Béjart, who was a very, very famous ballet dancer and choreographer, the name of his school is Mudra.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so go.
I'm just impressed that David knows so much about Indian classical dance, and the hand gestures are mudras, okay? Bharatanatyam has a lot of emphasis on mudras. Kathak, on the other hand, makes it a lot more flexible for the dancer to interpret. But for Bharatanatyam, when I was learning Bharatanatyam, we would spend months trying to get a single mudra down. So these are some of the ones that you want to look out for. Pataka. Do you guys want to try that? Just straight finger. This is pataka. 3 pataka. Bend your, I don't know what, ring finger. Yeah, 3 pataka. Okay? Ala padma. So see how it kind of, you get these 3 fingers out here and then like that. Ala padma, hamsasyam. So these 2 fingers are open, but the other 3 are closed. Okay? So let's do that again. Pataka, 3 pataka, ala padma, hamsasyam. Okay?
And can you tell us what they mean?
These are just the basics. They don't mean anything, but there are others that mean.
Okay, so Matteo told us that this meant open lotus, maybe.
Could be, yeah.
And does this mean swan or bird? Bird of paradise.
Okay, bird of paradise. Yeah, I like that. I didn't learn it that way, but I like that.
Yeah, because we would go from here to here.
Yes, yeah. How would you show a deer? So this is a deer, chasing the deer down, okay? Yeah. How would you show a fish? Right? Yeah. And a bird would be actually intertwined fingers, and then you kind of let it fly. That's your bird. So deer and fish and bird. Yeah. So watch out. I'm sure they'll be doing a lot of these. But let me stand up and show you one thing that you'll have to keep in mind as a big difference between Bharatanatyam and Kathak. In Bharatanatyam, you have to bend your knees. So David was talking about the plie position for ballet, which is so critical. In Bharatanatyam, most of the dancers always sit on their knees. And it's painful, trust me, because I'm not a Bharatanatyam dancer. Okay, so for me, this is not easy to do, but they are trained to do this. For Kathak, we are standing always with our feet in a V and back straight, and our whole posture is upright. So we never bend. So these are 2 differences between just the basic posture in Bharatanatyam versus Kathak. Then as I told you, the mudras, as David talked about, are much more prominent and have meaning in Bharatanatyam. In Kathak, they are a lot more fluid. So in Kathak, I can take my hand and just do that. You will never see that in Bharatanatyam. They will usually have that. Okay? It's much more defined. In Kathak, I will take and put my hand here. Bharatanatyam, they will always bend their hand like that. Yeah. They will never keep it out so much. It's mostly this. Sometimes they will have it too, but it's kind of like that and this. So these are all Bharatanatyam postures. So this is very much a Bharatanatyam posture where they're so much bent. Kathak, we don't. Kathak, on the other hand, has very fast footwork. So I didn't bring my bells. We usually wear bells. And you'll see them wearing bells too, and the bells are different for the different dance styles. But we make a lot of sound with our feet. We go very fast with our feet. That's one of the training that I do with my students is they start slow, and as they grow with me, they start dancing very, very fast, okay? We do pirouettes in Kathak, like ballet. You would not see pirouettes in Bharatanatyam, okay? They will turn, they will do something like that in Bharatanatyam, but we do these in Kathak. You would not see these in Bharatanatyam. Hope that helps?
Go ahead, Rita.
What is the connection between the Indian dance and the puppetry?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. So puppetry is a very different art form than dance, but I think the connection would be the stories that we can say. We probably pick on the same stories through the puppetry and the dance, you know. So.
I'd love to ask you, Anindita, you know, it helps us very much when we go to see something to understand the aesthetic of it, so to understand what we're looking at and to understand what we're looking to appreciate. For instance, if I go to a ballet, it helps to know that I'm looking to see if the ballerina is very light and her arms look beautiful and they're seamless and the lifts look... If I go to see a modern company, I want to see speed, I want to see excitement, I want to see something that's going to, you know, turn me on or challenge my concept. What should we be looking for in Ragamala? What's considered beautiful in Indian dance?
That's a very good question, David. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is passion. I mean, the passion should really come through from the dancer. Technique is very important, but you don't have to worry about that. You're there to enjoy. But those of us who are dancers, we want to be very deep-rooted in the technique. And so we spend years training with people who have good technique, like people who train with David, for instance. So I think when I first look at it, if a student comes into my school, I think one of the first things I'll see is the level of interest. Do they really want to learn? Because, you know, a lot of the kids who come to me are never going to be professional dancers, unlike kids who come to you. You know, they probably want to choose a career in dance. But most of my students at home are Indian kids who've grown up here, and they probably are going to be doctors and engineers and scientists and whatnot, but they're also very interested in dance. So the first thing I see is their interest and their passion. If they are passionate, they can do it. Sense of rhythm is very important. I see a lot of my kids not quite having that in the beginning, and then they cultivate it. It's one of the things that it's very difficult to cultivate if you don't have some innate sense of rhythm. So that's critical. But then again, the songs are so different. So a child whose parents are probably from the northern part of India will understand the language that I use in my dances. But a child whose parents are from the southern part of India might not understand all the things that I'm teaching. So I have to kind of do a translation for them, okay, when I teach. So hope that kind of answers. But for Ragamala, I think what would be critical for you to see is the passion, the choreography, the way they are going to cover the stage with, I don't know how many dancers are coming. James, do you know how many dancers are coming? Half a dozen, yeah. Clowes is a huge stage, but with half a dozen dancers, you'll still see how they cover the entire space and in their choreographies. You'll see a lot of footwork, not like our footwork in Kathak, but they will also have footwork. They will also wear bells. So listen to that music that's coming out of their feet, not just the music that's being played by the musicians. So, and watch for their facial expression.
Do you have some well-known dances? Like, do you have your own Swan Lake or Appalachian Spring or whatever?
No, that's a great question. Most of us dance, take stories from our epics. So There is one called Ramayana, and there's another one called Mahabharata, and we draw a lot from those. Hindus have, I'm a Hindu, Hindus have lots of gods and goddesses, so we take stories from those and depict. But we don't have opera like you're suggesting. Our Swan Lake Ballet, it's just something that you see with every ballet company executing. You won't necessarily see that so much with every company in India doing the same thing. But they will draw from the same source, but they might have a different story to depict. Yeah.
If you're telling a story, usually there are several individual characters in the story. Do you portray that as this dancer portrays one character, this dancer portrays another, or does everyone do the same thing together?
So a very good question again, and that would depend on the choreography. So suppose you have a troupe that's coming to perform with male and female dancers. You could pick a story where they could have individual roles and they'll enact it together, dance it together essentially. Or it could be one dancer doing a solo performance but showing 7 characters. So we even do that.
Thank you.
So we are exposed to Bollywood.
Yes.
Where does Bollywood fit into all of this?
Yes,
That type?
I don't think we can think of India without Bollywood, can we? It's impossible. I think the difference between Bollywood and classical Indian is classics like ballet require years of training, require a lot of dedication and commitment. Bollywood dancers are more fun, and although the choreographers for the Bollywood dancers have probably had classical training themselves, but many of the movie stars absolutely don't. And so I've seen interviews with these choreographers who complain how bad this actor is in dancing and how he had to dumb the whole dance down for this guy. And he's a real famous dancer, a real famous actor in India. So Bollywood to me is a genre that is easily attained. Classical is the one that takes perseverance.
I'm very interested in traditions of costuming. Are there certain things we should look for in
Very good
costumes?
question. Yes. You should definitely look for this. So again, as the dance forms are very different, the costumes are also very different. And if you look at the back on my flyer from my school, you'll see some costumes that we wear for Kathak. Bharatanatyam dresses are usually, you'll see them stitched, so they kind of are like pants that poof up here and then taper at the bottom, and then they have a lot of pleats here. And then they have a blouse with, again, a sash-like thing going around it. Okay, those are the traditional. Now people can change it a little bit to make it something interesting, right? We dance with a lot of jewelry on. I can't imagine contemporary dancers here or even ballet dancers dancing with earrings like this, but this is what we would wear to dance, right? And a necklace and something on top of our forehead and the bindi. I didn't wear one today, but yeah, they would wear bindi and makeup and bangles, and we wear all of that, and then we dance. So, so that's how we've trained and we've practiced to be able to do that.
I'd also like to say that those ankle bells are very heavy.
They are.
And it takes a lot of muscular work to get those bells going.
Yeah, these are made out of brass, and I was telling James the other day that I usually have been going back to the same shop in Calcutta for the last 35 years and buying my bells from there. So it's a really tiny little shop. This guy whom I buy it from, it used to be his dad's shop, so now he's inherited it. And this time when I went back, I saw his son there too. So it's kind of like in the family business. The way I start off my training with my students is they start with maybe 25 bells on each leg. And then they will, after a point, transition to 50. Then they transition to 100. Then, when my students are ready to spend a whole year of intense Kathak training such that I can present them at a solo concert, which I consider their graduation. So they do a 2-hour-long solo program. And all the pieces that I've taught them for over a year, they were 200 on each feet.
Oh, my.
So I don't know if I have bells on that flyer. They are about this big, so you can buy them different sizes also. If they're 200, then I would probably keep them in this size, but I could even go this big, yeah. The ones on the Bharatanatyam that you'll see Ragamala wearing, these are bells that are stitched onto a leather pad, and then they have buckles. So it's very different than the one I wear. Mine's tied to a string, so it's a long rope with bells, and I have to wrap it around my leg, multiple times and kind of stack it up and then dance. I regret not bringing them today. I'm sorry.
I've heard Indian musicians, my guess is, in hazy remembering now, probably sitar players and drum players, making percussive sounds with the mouth to tell someone how to do a particular rhythmic pattern, kata, kata,
Yes,
kata.
yes.
Is that part of what you were talking
Yes.
about with the percussion on your feet as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I also teach at the Gregory Hancock Dance Theater here in Carmel, and I have Caucasian students there, and they do this too. So I'll give you an example. Dha, then, dha, dha, then, dha, na, then, na, tita, then, dha. So I said that, and now this is how the feet will go. It's just essentially dha, then, dha, dha, then, dha, na, then, na, tita, then, dha. Okay? So, Kathak is an oral tradition. There was no written information. It was passed down from generation to generation as an oral art form. And so a lot of the things that were created were in their heads, and they would just kind of orally tell it to their students or their children. And that's how it would pass on. So.
What's on your hands? You said something about bells on your hands.
Not on the hands. It's more on the feet. We wear bangles. Oh. Bangles, yeah.
Any more questions? So, I always like to ask this of my guests because I think it gives us a very wonderful way to wrap the whole thing up and gets us thinking about our lives. So, as I want to ask you, as in your role as either a dancer, performer, or a teacher, what is the best thing about it? What do you love about it? And what is the most challenging thing about it?
I think as a teacher, imparting the knowledge to somebody who's willing to receive it, right? I mean, my students are like sponges. They want to learn as much as I can give them. And that is extreme satisfaction to me as a teacher, to mold them as a dancer. As a performer and a choreographer, I work at Lilly. That's my day job, right? Doing the science there. So there is an opportunity to be creative there too, but I think dance gives me a lot more of a creative outlet. So that fulfills me. So I think as a dancer and a choreographer, the creativity is what I'm really looking for, David. But I think as a teacher, to see the growth and develop my students is really what I'm looking for.
And what's the most challenging thing about your job? What do you hate about it? Because I hate some things about my job too. I do.
Right. I think it's very hard to tell a child that he or she's not getting it, right? I mean, you want them to succeed, and you want to set them up to succeed. But there will always be some children who will come to you maybe with not a sense of rhythm, or maybe just coming because their parents have told them to. And you can figure that out pretty fast, and that interest will wane. But continuing to teach someone who is not quite there is a huge challenge, because you don't want to break their heart, but you also have to let them know that maybe dance is not something that is right for them, and not everybody has to dance. There are lots of other opportunities to be creative, I feel. But that has been the hardest part, because like I told you, my students are my daughters, so I have a huge bond with them. I developed this bond with my students, and many of them have now been training with me for 10 years of the 12 years that I've been in Indiana. So some of these students, when they come young and with a lot of expectation, but soon realize that this is not something they can do, that becomes very challenging and very hard.
Oh, this questions.
Are there some of your students who are able to go on to work professionally because they live here and have not, had the background that you have?
That would be fantastic. They haven't quite reached that yet. I think my most senior students are still in college. So they are at different years in college. Like one of them is a sophomore, one of them is a junior. There's one who's a senior, but she's getting ready to graduate and go on to engineering or something. So I haven't had anyone yet who would be considering a profession in dance. I would love that if it happens. Yeah. Professional opportunity. So I think it's very important, especially being here, to expand your horizon beyond just one style. And David provides that opportunity at Dance Kaleidoscope. Gregory Hancock provides that opportunity at his academy. That's kind of what I tell my students, that if you're really interested in dance, don't just stay within Kathak. Explore as much as possible, or even explore with other Kathak dancers from other parts of the country. So the professional opportunities would be to be part of a company, like Ragamala, for instance. I mean, I don't have quite the time, unfortunately, to have a company. I just have a school, and that gives me enough satisfaction that I can at least do that, But being a part of a professional company, to be teaching and performing would be something that a professional dancer could aspire to.
Are all of your students Indian, or do you have other ethnic people that come and participate as well?
Sure. So at home in my school, I have mostly Indian. There was one girl who was Chinese at one point, but now she's graduated and moved on to another state. But then at Gregory Hancock Dance Theater, I have a lot of Caucasian students. So I see a good blend. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I've got two questions. One question is, you mentioned you did research at Eli Lilly, and I wondered what kind of research you were involved in and how that works when you're coordinating that with your dance. The other question is, you were mentioning someone going into engineering who's a senior. Well, the same way that you've been able to have a balance, are some of your students going to do something like that where they might go into teaching it to younger people as well? So as I said, it's sort of a two-edged question.
Sure. I think that's a great question. So I'm very fortunate that I work for Eli Lilly and Company. It's a great company that allows, I think, its employees a tremendous amount of work-life balance. And I'll be completing 12 years there at the end of April this year. I started off in 2003 with a lab of my own in Eli Lilly and Company, and I had that for about 7 years. Then I decided that, okay, I've done this now for a while, let me try some. Being in a large company, there are so many opportunities to explore. So I decided to go into a slightly different career path, which was non-technical for a little while, which was more into project management. Learned a lot of life skills there. for 3 years. And then I realized that in a pharmaceutical company, there is some things that are only learned if you're within the company working on projects. You just cannot learn it from books. And one of them is regulatory sciences, because regulations are so critical for us to get a molecule on the market, a medicine on the market. We have to work with our government, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. So for the last 3 years, that's what I've been doing. I'm in regulatory sciences now. I interact with the FDA to make sure that our molecules make it to the market. None of that have anything to do with Kathak, other than the fact that I think the fact that I keep dancing lets me be creative. And so I often am told that I can think out of the box for projects, and maybe there is a connection there, you know. So, but I'm just very fortunate that today, for instance, I could take 2 calls from home so that I could come here instead of having to be in downtown and drive in this crazy traffic.
I wanted to mention, I failed to say this earlier about some of our outreach, but if you would touch on next Friday night's opportunities, we have several spaces for observers, if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so we are very fortunate that Ragamala has agreed to do a masterclass here next Friday. What is the time, James? I forget.
5:30 to 6:30. It'll be next door in the Lily Hall studios.
Exactly. And I'm not sure exactly what they are going to be doing yet, but several of my dancer friends in the community here, you know, there is a huge Indian community here. And there are lots of dance teachers also. So just to give you an example, last October, the dance teachers came together to do a fundraiser for the Hindu temple here. And there were 14 studios that were represented in one evening. It was a tremendous amount of diversity, even within the Indian community and Indian classical dancers. So many of my dancer friends are going to be attending. Some of my students are coming. I'll be there. And Butler students are also participating. But I wanted you to be aware that there are spots for viewing the masterclass. So come and join us. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
So we just ask that people let us know if they're coming so we can count on that and get a sign-up sheet. We have 70 spots for observers and the bleacher seats in room 310 or studio 310 next door.
Bring a pillow.
Yes.
That's my advice to you. No, really, those bleachers
Yes.
are uncomfortable. Bring a pillow.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. You were talking about your students were all your daughters. You teach no male dancers then? Do they come through a different path?
No, I wish I had male dancers. It's just that there are not that many Indian boys who want to learn to dance. If they want to learn to dance, they would rather do hip hop and not classical, you know? So I don't teach hip hop. But I remember presenting at the India International Festival one year, and a gentleman who was helping me coordinate the show said, I'm going to send you some male dancers your way. I'm like, please do. I would love to have some in my school. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The dance form is a storytelling art form. Are there traditional stories or a thread that is common to many of the dances? Would there be a common theme that you could tell me about?
Let me give you one example that I think you'll see in many of the Indian classical dances. So this is a story taken from one of our epics, Mahabharata. So here, there are 5 brothers who are married to one woman. Okay? 5 brothers who are married to one woman, Draupadi. Okay? And then they have a set of cousins. They are 100 brothers. So there's 5 brothers, and the 100 brothers, they are fighting for the kingdom. And the oldest brother among those 100 cousins, and the oldest among these brothers, they decide to have a game of I don't know if it's chess or what is it where you throw the die in? Something like that, yeah. It's some sort of a gambling game. And he kept losing. So he lost his kingdom, he lost his throne, he lost his crown, he lost his jewels, he lost his clothes, and then he lost his wife. So this story we depict through dance because what happened when he lost his wife is the second brother from the group of 100 comes and starts to derobe her in the court. And that is terrible, right, for a woman to lose her clothes in front of everybody. But what happens is, as he is pulling her clothes out from one side, the god Krishna provides her with clothes from the other side. And we depict that. So from one side, the clothes are being pulled off, the other side, she's being draped. Yeah. So this is a very common story, Draupadi's Vastraharan, that we depict in many different dance styles from India.
Sounds very sexy.
Very.
Well, of course. Go look at those. No. Go look at the carvings in India.
No bikini, though.
I just wanted to veer this conversation, and please feel free to ask more questions. But I wanted to ask you, because you are so much the Renaissance woman, as far as I'm concerned. I'm in awe and admiration of you, because you balance your scientific part of your life with your family life and your artist's life, and you grew up in a country where the arts were an integral part of your culture. You're growing up. You were expected to do that when you were young. You came from a tradition. You knew who you were because of that tradition. Your arts told you who you were because of your tradition. It's something that we desperately lack in this country. And I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about how could we do a better job of having that, kind of identity that's imbued in the artistic core of the country. Because we lack it completely.
Okay, so you've seen a lot more students than I have, David, in your career. But I think what I usually tell them is you have to know yourself and you have to be amazingly confident in yourself. So without confidence, I don't think much is achievable. But first you have to know who you are, right? You have to know what you can do, what you cannot do, and you have to be very comfortable. I was telling James one day that I don't have trouble wearing this and filling gas at a gas station here. Even, I might get some stares, but that's fine. They need diversity. It's okay. So I think what I want to say is that I'm very comfortable in my skin. It doesn't bother me. And I work in a company where diversity is extremely welcome. And this country and this city, I think, is just grown as far as diversity is concerned. I mean, when I came here in 2003 and what it is today, it's hugely different. And people here are so accepting. So know yourself and have confidence in yourself. I think if you have that, you'll be fine in whatever you do.
I think if we could get the media to talk more about this kind of thing instead of deflated footballs.
Well, the Colts are really upset about that. I know. The Patriots think it's sour grapes, but the Colts are really upset.
Well, I want to say that you may or may not agree with me. I think it's, as Americans, it would be very, very good for us to go outside of this country and see how other people view us. In a strange way, because I lived in Norway for 3 weeks, I lived in Denmark for 3 weeks, I lived in China for 11 weeks. And interestingly enough, their view of who we are as people comes completely from popular culture. It comes from movies, it comes from the songs, it comes from rock music, it comes from pop music, and it's now coming from hip-hop music. When I was in Denmark, and exported food and beer. When I was in Denmark, everybody learned English from the songs and from movies. That's how they learned English. So I think that the hip-hop movement that has happened in the last 20 years is one of the best things that has happened to this country, because it's not only young people making rap songs about their troubles. It's a cultural movement. It's a cultural shift. And there's a lot of creativity in it. And what's really wonderful for dance is that there is a dance component to it. Because 20 years ago, it was not cool for teenagers to dance. Now, everybody wants to dance because it's part of the culture.
Sure.
And I think that one of the things we have to learn how to do is to celebrate that Americanness about what it is that we invent, and be proud of it and celebrate it and say, we invented this. We invented jazz. We invented modern dance. We invented hip-hop. This is ours. We have to be proud of it. Let's celebrate American culture.
Exactly.
This
Totally
is who
agree.
we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I think. Any other comments?
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for
David.
being our guest. And please enjoy Ragamala next week, Saturday, and please go and see your fabulous concert. When is it? Tell us again. March the 28th at Pike.
It's a Saturday, Pike Performing Arts Center. Why don't I send the information, James, and you can maybe forward it out.
And what time does it start?
3 to 5 in the afternoon.
Oh.
And after that, we are going to have an indie food truck with Indian food after the show. So you can either eat there or take home delicious boxes. To the Arts Council?
And 3 to 5 on a Saturday afternoon does not conflict with Dance Kaleidoscope,
There you go.
because our show is not till 8 o'clock. You can do 2 in one night.
There you go. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much.